Hello, everyone. This is Jimmy Cultist back again with another tutorial about logic in dreams. And today we're going to be talking about how to throw objects. Now, I've done a tutorial on how to pick up objects. So this one ought to be pretty much the same, very similar. And some of the logic carries over. But I'm going to be sort of going over it again, just for the sake of safety. Because some of that stuff does interface with, one another. But first thing is first. I have a block of material, non-collidable and invisible and unlabeled, grouped with the puppet's chest. I've put a microchip here, and on there I've put a little tag called Lift PL. Lift PL interacts with a little teleporter inside a chip on this object. This object is actually grouped with a block as well, which I put a microchip on just for stability's sake. I want it to be properly oriented, so I put it on there. And I'm going to go ahead and explain how this all works real quick as a refresher. I have a tag that is called can lift. And inside the puppet's lift microchip, or little grab as I've called it, which is right here, inside this core logic chip, I have the can lift zone, which is set to detect a tag called can lift, naturally. And this is going to act as the radius at which you can pick up an object, or the hitbox, I guess you could call it. And it leads into a node. Now, what does this node do? This node leads into a little chip called timelines, which has a node with a NOT gate hooked up to the power. And the node is hooked up to a timeline set to play once. On this timeline is an animation for picking up objects. There is also a little action recorder set to keyframe mode, which automatically shuts off my ability to move by turning off the power to the puppet interface, or in this case, the chip in which the interface is located. And there is a small little switch leading to the B input on this selector. Now, what does the selector do? The selector runs into a chip called logic. At least the B output does, anyway. The B output also runs into this other chip called toss. And I will be talking about toss later, but that's going to be the ability for us to toss the object. Now, anyway, getting down to business. Inside logic, I have this little thing called PL point, which I don't really need anymore. But basically what it does is it orients the object's direction if you're dragging it. But since I'm not dragging it, it won't actually be necessary, so just ignore that. Maintain grip is a separate chip. Well, a separate trigger zone, I should say. Set to detect a tag called maintain grip, and you may notice there's a tag inside the item called maintain grip, and all this does is make sure that your grip is stable even if this shuts off, which is necessary for certain logical things. But anyway, we'll get on to this. There's also power, this little switch called power, and all it does is turn on the lift PL tag, so that creates the orientation of the key. Which, this teleporter set to match target orientation. And if you just press L1 and square, you can just set how you would like the key to be carried in the puppet's arms. And since it's mounted to the chest, it will more or less move with the puppet's chest, rather than floating around like it would if you put it in here with the other logic. I also have this little action recorder called parameters. And all it does is turn off some gizmos elsewhere. I guess I could go into it. It alters these running and lifting animations. Like here's the default running pose. Arms up. And here's the lifting running pose. It also alters some things, like it cuts down on, if you just go L1 and square in here, it cuts down on arm vigor and things that would kind of mess up our keys, you know, trajectory. It would look really weird if you're like carrying a key and your arms are flapping around. So it shuts off that. It also shuts off the ability to push and pull, which are other actions that we're not really using. But if you were going to have that, you would want them to be shut off. I've also got it shutting off these different types of jump animation. And I've got this one special jump animation called grab, which is just created for this, essentially. I've also turned down the springiness quite a bit so that it'll be more rigid when you go into it. And let's see, what else have we done? I think that's pretty much all that it does, actually. It also, I believe, let's take a look. I think it also alters some things in here. Maybe it alters the speed? No, doesn't seem to. Oh, it alters the jump height. It also alters our speed, which I've, well, maybe it doesn't alter our speed. Oh, yes, it does. See the run speed? I have this little, gadget here called a, value slider hooked up to my run speed so that I can just alter it in here anytime I want. And it basically slows you down when you're carrying the key. That's all it does. But you can't run as fast. And I think that's pretty much everything that the parameters action recorder does. There's also a pose in here. There's this one pose, which is just basically the lifting pose. So when the when this is on, this switch, he'll be carrying it around. And I've got it hooked up to a NOT gate with this alternative pose, which basically, the only difference is this pose only affects the arms. It doesn't affect your pelvis and other parts, your belly or torso. It's only this. And I think this is for the running pose. Like when you're running, if we go over to the alternative running pose, I think that that's what it does. Let me take a look. Oh, it's our jumping. Yes, the jumping. It's so that everything but the arms is affected, or everything, yeah. All the alternative limbs are affected, but not the ones. It's specific to jumping. It's not super important to our tutorial, but I would want to explain it just to be sure. And we also have this little timeline inside here, which is basically just the way that you put things down. I've got this shut action recorder, and it turns off the power of the can lift zone so that you won't be able to pick things up while you're putting them down. It also shuts off the pose, of course, because you don't want the pose active during the duration, otherwise it'll interrupt the animation for setting the key down. Also got the speed is a bit lousy. I think it's too fast. And I've got a switch hooked into A, which will just reset us to the default of not carrying anything. And I've got this switch going into the NOT gate, preventing playback, and I've got this set to play once. So yeah, I think you get the idea. This is the usual grab mechanics for objects that I've created in the past. Now in terms of the key, it's got a thing called PL point in there, but that doesn't really do anything, so just forget about that. It's also got an action recorder that shuts off the can't pick up tag. Now, why do I have that shut off? Because basically the tag is connected to a timer set to 0.2, and the signal for finished, which you can access in here, is going to a can't action recorder. And all that does is shut off your ability to carry the object. And this is just to prevent you from carrying two objects at once. See, I put this can't pick up zone set to in scene. So once this is active, it'll trigger all other keys to not pick up. The thing is, though, is because, you know, you're currently carrying it, this action recorder will be active, shutting that off for the key that you happen to be holding, meaning that you won't end up with the contradiction of not being able to carry your own key, because that function is shut off for the one you're specifically carrying, but not all the other ones. Kind of nifty, if I do say so myself. There's also this microchip, which is for when you throw the key. It's got a motion sensor hooked up to a calculator set to greater than 0.62. And it's hooked up to a rotator set on local space, -500, full rotation strength. And basically all it does is make the key spin around a little bit when you throw it. That's all it does, nothing much. If the key falls at a certain speed, it'll start spinning automatically. So, yeah, now that we've explained all that, we can finally get down to the actual core of our video, which is tossing, which is luckily actually pretty simple. So, to get down to business, the prompt I am using for tossing is the square button, but you could hook up anything you want into here. It's inside this chip, which this chip is only active when the B output is active on the selector, so you have to be holding something in order to be throwing it, so there won't be any throwing with nothing in your hands. Anyway, square goes into a node set to a timeline that is on play once. And of course there is a switch leading into a NOT gate going into the node to prevent playback prematurely. And in this timeline called throw, there's another timeline set to sustain. This is in case you want to add a switch to the power and turn off this animation. Like say you're throwing a key and then you get slapped by a monster and thrown across the room or something. If you just shut off this switch, it'll shut off this animation and this whole process, meaning that you'll get tossed. And you won't see the weird animation play out at the same time as the other one. But anyway, it's not really highly necessary. First of all, we have this little action recorder called Move Off. All it does is prevent your movement by shutting off the puppet interface. Then we have a force applier set to 6.0 and 100% force strength. It's also set to cube, and it's set to push and directional. So we can kind of determine the angle at which the key will be thrown. And it affects both collidable and non-collidable, both invisible and visible. And it only affects objects, which I have gone into key over here. If you just press L1 and square, you'll see that it is labeled as an object. So, pretty much simple business, I'd say. Oh, one other thing, going back to the key, I just want to check it. But something you might do is make the key non-collidable when you're holding it with this little action recorder. Because this will be active, it'll be non-collidable. Just something I advise doing, just in case. Next we have this, which is the pose off. action recorder, and all it does is go in here and turn off the pose chip, allowing for the animation to play. There's our tossing animation, if you can see it down there. Sorry it's so far away. There it is. That's our toss animation. Just using some linear blend keyframes with a little springiness. We've also got the logic off action recorder. And all it does is turn off the ability to pick up the key while throwing it, which is kind of a no-brainer. Just turns that off right there. Actually, though, it'd probably be better to shut off can't lift, to be honest. That would be ideal. Now, we've also got this action recorder, which I think is just another animation, to be honest. Is it active? Does it actually play? It looks like it does. I don't know why I've got that in there, to be honest. That's kind of bad for the system. It would overlap with this keyframe. Oh well. Don't know why I had it in there, but I've turned it off, so it shouldn't interrupt anything. And we have this switch leading out to the A input, which will just reset us back to square one after we've tossed something. So let's go ahead and try it. R1 is our grab button. You can press R1 again to set the key down. But let's go ahead and press square while carrying it to toss it. Now that was really weird looking. Oh wait, I think I figured out why I have this. This is the animation. This is for the tag. Yes, this is actually to move the key's tag, the lift PL, to make it look a little more natural when you lift it up. Okay, I was in error. That looks much better. Still a little wonky though. I probably wouldn't, actually release a game with that kind of animation. Although I probably have done that in the past. Nobody's perfect. But anyway, that's how to make a throwable object. You could even put a little sound effect if you pleased. I'm not sure what the sound effect would be, but if we go into the MM sound, go to whooshes, sure we could find something. You just put it right here on the timeline. And there you got a little throw sound effect. Another thing I've got going on, which I'm going to cover real quick, is in my jumping animations. I've taken the output from distance from ground and hooked it up to a calculator set to greater than 0.01. And it's hooked up to an action recorder. Now what does the action recorder do? It just turns off this. I want to have it so that when you're jumping you won't pick things up in midair, because that would look stupid. But everything else will function just fine, so. And that's all. That's pretty much everything. Hopefully you'll find this helpful. This was requested by an individual. Sorry if I can't remember the name they have on YouTube. But yeah, they're making a Little Nightmares game, so I thought I'd cover the subject a little bit. It has the tossing objects mechanic. Multiple games have this mechanic, but it's specifically with that in mind. There are other methods of making throwable objects, which I may cover in the future. There's an emission method, for instance, although that's a little bit more complicated. But for now, that's all. Thanks for watching. If you have any thoughts, leave a comment, and if you enjoyed the video, leave a like. And don't forget to subscribe and ring the notification bell so you don't miss future videos. That's all for now. Goodbye.